We are talking about, this is chapter 2, obviously. Ron set the stage, we've seen all the big investment numbers, so the question now is, in which companies does the money actually go, right? And of course, we're gonna have a few slides on this, 5 slides to be precise. So what do you see here in on this slide? For the people who have been following us and following our webinars, you probably know what I'm going to say now. For the others who are joining for the first time, this is obviously something new, but I think it's important to take the time to quickly tell you what this framework, as we call it, is about. So this is our SportsTech framework. So ever since we are starting to collect data on SportsTech, and it's also true for football tech, we have our research based on this framework. Because for us it's important to be able to speak with the same language and the same structure about things, and also this lets them or makes them comparable over time, which is another very important thing. Let me quickly walk you through it, not in detail, but that you get an idea for it. So we have 3 big sectors, as you can see here, the green, the magenta, and the blue one. The green one is all solutions that are for the athlete, and according to Bill Bowerman from Nike, whoever has a body is an athlete. So athlete not as in elite, but whoever is doing sports. So if you're a runner or a cycler or a tennis player or whatever you're doing, you find solutions for yourself in there. And then we have 3 subsectors, which are called variables and equipment, performance tracking and coaching and preparation. I think just by the wording, you already have an idea what they represent. If you want to know more, read the report or check this on our website. The second big sector is fans and content. As the name says, this is for the consumer of sport. So if you're watching sports at home, on the go, in the bar, on your phone, or maybe you're in the stadium or some other venue, this is for you to watch sport. And the blue area, management and organization, is more for the executive, the manager of sports. So for example, if you run a football club, if you have to manage a stadium, if you run a gym, then you probably find solutions which are more B2B in the blue section, right? And all of them, as you can see, have subsectors. And what is not shown here is we have even one more level that we call subsectors, but that's not something for today. What we want to look at today, because we're looking at the data from a football tech perspective, is to see where does the most investment go to. And interestingly, it's fans and content with 445.7 million of the investment that Ron showed, is the clear dominant player in football tech. This actually translates to 68% of all investment. And the strongest subsector, I think Ron mentioned it, football tech has been driven by content solution very heavily, especially in the years 2016 and 2018. The biggest subsector in fans and content is news and content, where you see your streaming solutions, your live tickers, your transfer rumors, all the gossip you can get about the football industry. That sits in news and content, which is the biggest subsector, and Hupu, the streaming solution from China, is the dominant player there with overall 337.9 million of investment. And this sector, news and content, is so dominant that is twice as big as the next biggest one, which also sits in fans and content, which is fan experience and social platforms, with Otro being the leading company. The second biggest sector is the green one, is activity and performance. And that is actually an interesting one because it also has some similarities to the overall sports tech market, where driven by the fitness industry, wearables and equipment is like a red hot subsector. And also here in football tech, we see very good development, but mostly this whole sector of activity performance is so successful because the underlying mechanism is that it enables amateur or grassroots players to train and practice and development like professional players. So we see more and more solutions that are targeting grassroots and amateur level. And Ron is going to talk about that in a bit more depth later in a different chapter. Last but not least, we have the blue sector, which I said is more B2B, which accounts for 11% of all the funding. There we especially see the trend of more automated content. This is why Pixelot with $60 million it should actually be, or no, it's euro, be the dominant player. So long story short, fans and content dominating, historically driven activity and performance and management organization with interesting topics such as training like a pro and automated content. But the question is, what is the development over the last couple of years? So all the data that you just have seen, we put on a timeline because we think, as always, it's important to compare that over a certain period of time. So just by looking at this slide, you will immediately see this is a very magenta slide, right? Which means that fans and content, like we seen on the slide before, is clearly the most dominant sector of sports tech. But, and that's interesting to note, 2020 could potentially mark a change in that sector, because for the first time since 2015, fans and content, the sector contributed for less than 50% of the overall funding. And actually in 4 of the last 5 years before 2020, fans and content had more than 60% of the funding. So then we might be witnessing a certain change there, even though, and Ron mentioned that before, the sample size is somewhat small for 2020, as we have not seen so much investment this year. The other thing that we want to highlight on this slide is what ultimately is the result of what I just said, is that activity and performance and management organizations, so the blue and the green sectors, for the first time account for more than 50% of the funding. And this is especially due to activity and performance becoming more and more relevant. Like we said, amateur players training like pros. Activity performance had the strongest year last year, but for the first time reaching more than 1/3 of the funding. And also this year, they're like around 1/3 of the funding. But what I want to highlight as the last thing on this page is that management organization actually had the strongest contribution since we started to look at this from 2015 onwards, with 21.2%, another indicator that automated content production and sharing is actually a thing that we should look at. This is this slide, and also here for me it's time to start a poll. I want to ask you something. I'm publishing the poll. So before we come to the next slide, you should see the poll now. If you don't see it, click on the poll section of this solution of Livestorm. So on the next slide, we're gonna see the top 10 funded companies of 2020. And what we like to know from you, how many countries do they represent? So are these 10 companies from maybe only 3 countries, because we have some dominant players in the market? Or maybe the other opposite, maybe they're coming from 9 different countries, which would be a lot. Or is it something in between with 5 or 7? I see some answers coming in. So once again, how many countries do you think are represented by the companies in the top 10 funding list of 2020? I'm gonna give you 2 more seconds. So I think the current tendency is clear. You guys say from 5 countries that has been selected the most, and the least selected one is 9 countries. Let's have a look at that slide. So, and you guys can start the counting now if you want. Let me read the names. London, Petah Tikva, Hamburg, Mamaroneck, Paris, Istanbul, Cadiz, Jeddah, Edinburgh, Amsterdam. Do the math, do the counting. Interestingly, your least chosen answer, and it was only one person who chose this answer. Actually, Ron, we should have a present for that person. I don't know what it could be, but whoever said 9 countries, let us know in the chat. Don't lie to us. If there are 2 people, we know that you lied. maybe we come up with some surprise. I don't know. Long story short, or coming back to the content, we think this is incredible. 9 countries actually contributed to the top 10 list of 2020. And technically, because I think we have counted UK twice, if I'm not mistaken, with London and Edinburgh. Also there, it's England and Scotland, right? So if you want, it's actually 10 countries, right? Okay, so we really think this is cool because this is very unusual. All the top 10 lists of a year that we have done before have painted a very different picture. We really like this. Coming to the content, first of all, the list starts with Minute Media and Pixelot. And if you think back what Ron told you about SportsTech, that for us, solutions that are targeting maximum 4 sports are counted as SportsTech, and the ones who account for 5 or more are multi-sports. We made a few exceptions, actually only 3 for this report, and Minute Media and Pixelot are amongst them. So both Minute Media and Pixelot serve more than 4 sports. We are aware of this. But as both companies have so strong roots in football, for example, Minute Media with the platform 90 Minute, or Pixelot starting heavily in the football industry, we said it's only fair to count them as SportsTech. And by the way, I'm not sure if Ron mentioned that, if a company like Minute Media has collected a certain amount of funding and they have served multiple sports, we do not account the entire amount of money as SportsTech or to SportsTech. So we split that evenly through the amount of sports a solution targets. So if a solution is targeting football, tennis and basketball, only 1/3 of the amount gets accounted for SportsTech. This is important to say. Coming back to the list, Minute Media got 40 million this year. This was pre-COVID actually. Maybe they were lucky that they were closing the round so early. Clear leader for this year. And then it was Pixelot and bPro 11 following on ranks 2 and 3. And actually, I think it's fair to say that video content is a very hot topic this year, manifested in Pixelot and bPro, who are both content video production companies, video analytics companies. The difference though is that Pixelot basically wants to put a camera on every pitch out there on a grassroots level and share that content, make it as accessible so that every parent or grandparent can watch the son or the daughter play football. bPro 11, however, also is targeting amateur, a bit of the grassroots market, and is more on the analytics side. So it's not necessarily about streaming as much as possible, which they also try to do, but it's mostly on the analytics side. Cool. This is the top 10 funding rounds in 2020. And of course, we also have to make a comparison with the top 10 all-time funding rounds in SportsTech, like I said, all-time overall. So this is, as we always like to say, the Hall of Fame of SportsTech, or the Champions League of SportsTech. So what do we see here? A few observations. First of all, 6 out of the 10 companies are either from the US and China. So while this year, 2020, was sort of diverse with 9 countries, this list is not. 6 out of the 10 are either from China or the US. The other thing, also not so diverse, but painting a clear picture, is that 7 out of the 10 solutions are actually content solutions. Remember, we said that fans and content accounted for the most investment. This is also represented here. So it's fair to say that also in SportsTech, content is king. What else is there to say? Hoopo is actually the only unicorn in SportsTech. Not sure exactly where the valuation of Minute Media stands. Should still be below $1 billion, but Hoopo, as we know as of now, is the only unicorn. And the funding gap between Hoopo and Minute Media is quite a big one. A few other companies to highlight. Fubo TV, we're gonna get to them on the next page, got acquired this year, so we won't see any more funding here. Next VR got acquired by Apple. We won't see more funding here. On number 6, Odro, the content platform, initially got a lot of investment, but it's gone really quiet around Otro. They have a new partnership / owner with 11. We're going to talk about them in a minute. So let's see what comes up there. But what we like to see on this chart are some new challengers. Like I just said, I mean, there are a couple companies who will not raise any funding anymore. And on position number 10, Overtime has 35 million of investment, so the entry barriers are also not so high. So we really think it's time for someone new to come in this space and to challenge these leaders in that field. Sweet. Last slide for this chapter. What do you see here? It's a lot of information, by the way. Now we're moving away from funding numbers and wanted to give you an insight into the world of M&As, IPOs, so let's say the bit more mature part of the funding funnel, or what comes after the funding funnel. We have looked at the most notable deals, investments and IPOs since 2015, and this is the example. I'm gonna jump around between those three blocks a little bit, but I think it makes the most sense this way. So what I think was the most important news or information this year was actually that Fubo TV got acquired by FaceBank Group. You see that in undisclosed deals, so they didn't share the investment or the acquisition amount. So Fubo TV is now part of FaceBank Group, and what is interesting to know is that FaceBank Group renamed Fubo TV into Fubo TV Media Inc. And Facebook renamed, FaceBank renamed itself to Fubo TV Inc. So they renamed themselves after their sub company, basically. And what happened then is they brought Fubo TV Media to the stock market. And this was the only IPO in football tech we have seen actually over the last couple of years. And the most notable many years ago, I think it was 2013, was Catapult. So nothing happened since, but Fubo TV this year went to the stock market and is currently valued slightly below $1 billion. But what is the topic? The topic is, again, it's content, it's streaming, it's IP, it's creating virtual experiences. So this is a topic that you actually see throughout that list. And to highlight a few more, what have we seen as well? I mean, like we said, Apple acquired NextVR for actually a kind of a cheap price, which was below the last valuation of the last funding round. Last year, we've seen the acquisition of LiveView by Francisco Partners. Same story, and also the acquisition of MyCujo by 11 Sports, who are working on a new content platform with different sections like amateur sports, women's football as well, and some others, are all driven by the same topic. It's rights, it's entertainment, it's IP, and it's streaming. So this is the clear message that this slide is sending, and the development that we have seen over especially the last 1 or 2 years.